Heute hatte ich einen englischsprachigen Gast und deswegen springe ich auch gleich rüber. Because today was the first time I have a guest on my podcast show, and my guest was D'Angelo Harris, or short, Dilo. We met in Singapore 2018-19, just before COVID, and we are both in a recruiting game, headhunting game, and so on. Today with him, we talk about why did he move from Germany to the US to Singapore? What is the most important part in his eyes? What does he wish for in the recruiting game in the future? What should you take care of if you're a recruiter? And what is maybe not that important? And so much more. So, when you're interested in how to learn how to be a recruiter, how to move maybe abroad, and all that stuff, then you should definitely listen and learn from Dilo because he's one of the best recruiters I've ever known. And he can do so much more. And he tells you that he's very hands on, that he loves to work, to get to know new people, and how you can learn this too. All this you're going to learn from this episode. Have fun listening to it. To make it easy. So, welcome to another episode. And today I'm not by myself. I have a very special guest. And before I share too much about you, maybe, D'Angelo, you would like to introduce yourself and happy welcome.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Patricia. So my name is D'Angelo, but everyone calls me D'Lo. So feel free to use that nickname. I draw the line at J-Lo, so please no J-Lo. I am a German-American Army brat. I was born and raised in a little German town near Munich. Well, not super little, but German town near Munich called Nuremberg, to a German mother and an African-American father. I lived there for 16 years. I speak fluent German. My favorite German meal is Schweinebraten, for those Germans out there that I know are listening, with the Semiknödel. That's my favorite. At 16, my dad, who's in the U.S. Army, had his military orders cut to move us, all five of us, we're actually five siblings, but all seven of us in total, to Atlanta, Georgia, where it was a bit of a culture shock moving from southern Germany to the deep south in the U.S. I finished high school there and graduated, and then went to college, graduated University of Georgia, class of 2010, go Dogs, and then worked in Atlanta for 2-3 years for one of the biggest recruitment firms globally, still one of the biggest, called Adecco. And worked specifically within the technology sector, primarily for big banks and their tech teams, recruiting engineers, developers, infrastructure folks, security folks, all up and down the East Coast. And then got an opportunity to move out here. I'll pause there. That's kind of a quick background to what I'm doing in Asia, but that's a little kind of my early days.
That is pretty cool. And in a second, we're going to talk about more about your time in Asia, and that's where also we met. But first of all, how is life now without Schweinebraten?
Life without Schweinebraten, being very honest, is sad. It's I miss it every day. I'm going home later this year to have some home cooked Schweinebraten from my mom, who cooks up a storm. So it's not the same without it.
Yeah, totally agreeable. So, first of all, thank you for your introduction. And I mean, just from what you shared right now, your life is super interesting and not like the standard version some people know. You are also very good, not only in having adventures, moving abroad, but also in reading people, communicating, working with people. So, before we dig deeper into this, when did you realize that you're very good in, communicating, sharing, or connecting with people?
Yeah, so I think I realized from a fairly young age. I think maybe maybe not that young, like 15, 16 years old, maybe, when I was a bagger at a grocery store in Germany, and I just would get constantly like put on warning because I spent too much time talking to the customers as I'm bagging their stuff. I was like, man, I just really love talking and getting to know people, right? I just have this general curiosity for people and what their stories are and what their sort of like narrative is in this life. I feel like the world, sometimes you're in this big GTA lobby, and it's just up to you to figure out who's on what path, who's saying what, who's thinking like a certain way. And so since then, I've had jobs. Like one of my first jobs in the US was working in fast food. It was not glamorous. I didn't like it much, but it builds character. And then worked in retail, where again you're dealing with people day in day out. And I became one of like the top salesmen for iPods when they first came out in like 2007, I think it was 2006, 2007. So it's always been around people. It's been in kind of the service slash like retail industry, and yeah, and then in college I graduated with a degree in marketing with an emphasis on professional selling. So I really kind of found a way to commercialize my desire to connect and chat and get to know people with some business acumen. Say, okay, well, how can this person help me, or how can I help that person? How can we create a mutually beneficial agreement between each other, and not just small talk? And that's what kind of made me a success in the headhunting space.
What I find interesting, because when you say, right, quite from an early age on, you realize that you're good at this and you want to, I don't know, graduate in this kind of area. What I realized, that it took me forever to understand that what I'm doing is actually good, is something, a skill, is something you need, is a talent. I was like, well, everybody can do this.
Mhm.
Did it take you a long time, or was it quite clear for you right from the beginning? Because it sounded like, oh yeah, super clear, super straight.
Yeah, no, so it's a great question. And the truth is, it did take some time because I was still, and I still am, like kind of an introverted, shy guy in most scenarios. Because even growing in Germany, I had this sort of identity crisis. I was half black and half white, and I didn't really know where I belonged,
Mm.
what was my community, who was my tribe. And because of that, I just kept to myself, and I just stayed in my own little world, my own little bubble, stayed close to my family. So, when I started realizing I have a general curiosity for people wanting to get to know others, it still took a lot for me to come out of my shell, because I now definitely identify as a introverted extrovert. Where for me, I can sort of activate it when I need to and become a certain type of person when I need to. But for me to recharge and for me to really like be comfortable and be in my most comfortable state, it's just really isolating and being alone and being
Mm.
quiet and not talking to anyone. So it did take a while for me to realize that there's a desire there, and I can step into becoming that super extroverted person when needed, when it makes like sense and contextually whatever I'm dealing with. But it wasn't like an instant
Mhm.
I can become that. It was training it, and especially with public speaking and doing like big talks and panels and moderating. Now that anxiety's kind of weaned away, the same way people were scared to fly, hopefully eventually that kind of diminishes. But it's been a lifelong journey of working out that, getting rid of that introversion.
Interesting. It's funny because just yesterday I talked to a friend and we were like, yeah, when we were growing up, we thought at the age of 30, we know exactly what we do in life, what's our job. And now we're like, hey, I'm still learning and trying to evolve and finding out what I'm really good at and what's my strength. And that's kind of a lifelong journey, I find.
Absolutely.
And so you shared your story until Atlanta, but
Yeah.
now you've been in Singapore for quite a while, where we met. Was it 2018, 2019, something like this?
Yes.
So, why Singapore, and how was the first move to Singapore? Because the time difference, what is it, 9 hours, 10 hours to Atlanta?
12 hours.
12.
Exactly 12 hours. And then
Okay.
if there's no daylight savings time, so after they sort of get rid of daylight saving times, then or activate daylight savings time, it's 13 hours. So it's a
Well, that's tough.
bit of a difference for sure, and communicating with friends and family back home. But to answer your question, yeah. So part two of my "Who Am I" story is, while working for Deco in Atlanta, an email rotated around. I remember it was titled as "Go Asia Campaign," which they were rotating high potential junior consultants into high potential markets globally. And for them, this one geared towards Asia, and they had KL, so Kuala Lumpur, they had Seoul, Korea, they had Shanghai, they had Beijing, they had Singapore on there. And I just raised my hand. I was like, okay, I'm about 2.5 years in my firm. I'm doing really well. Like, thank you, God, for allowing me to be super successful. And then they picked me, and it was between Singapore and Hong Kong. And
Oh,
you know,
wow. Could you
yeah.
choose?
So honestly, the managing directors from both made the choice very easy. The managing director from Hong Kong was an English guy, and he was like, "Hey, it's very polluted. It's very crowded. Not everyone speaks English. No one's friendly, and you live like in a shoebox." And
It
he's
is.
like, he's like, "I think my kids got asthma from the air pollution." So I was like, "Okay, cool.
That's a
Thank
great
you,
marketer.
MD Hong Kong." I pick up the phone, MD Singapore, and it's a French guy. He's like, "D'Angelo, the weather is so good here. You wear some flip flops. It's warm every single day. You go to the beach. You have a good time. Everyone speaks English." I'm like, "Sir, do you speak English?" No, I'm just kidding. I didn't say that. So I'm like, okay, that is a no brainer for me. So it was really just how they both sold their markets,
Yeah.
and it was supposed to be a 2-year contract. I signed, and a year in, I knew Singapore was a special place and decided to put all cards in. When I first moved to Singapore, I started for a boutique recruitment brand called Expand. I think they're called Salt now, where I was specialized in the video gaming industry, which was a lot of fun. I got to meet a lot of cool gaming studios, publishing houses, and gaming developers. It was awesome, but it was a too small market in Singapore. So then Randstad, the big bad Dutch boys, came a knocking, and they offered me an opportunity to come join a bigger ship. And they made me an offer that seemed very compelling to focus on startups and to focus purely on the client side. And I joined with them, and that was a 7.5-year journey. And maybe we'll
Wow.
pause there and talk about my more recent job in a bit. But that's 8 years already out of my 10 years in Singapore.
That is really a long time. And it's so funny because from time to time here over in Germany, where I'm right now, I see the commercials, and in my head it's Randstad, right? But I know actually they're pronounced Randstadt. But for me,
Randstad.
Randstadt is so wrong. It's Randstad because that's the way I got to know them.
Yes,
So yeah, whenever I see them, I'm like, yeah, it's not Randstad.
I know. Even during my interview, I remember meeting with the MD, a really good guy, Michael Smith, and he was like, "So tell us why you want to work at Randstad." It was an Australian guy, and I was like, "Well, I want to work at Randstad because you guys have the brand, the training infrastructure, and but no." And then later I corrected him. I was like, "Actually, it's Randstad."
It's
Um,
Randstadt. But
yes.
Randstad sounds a little bit nicer, more internationally, not too bad.
Yeah, exactly. So it was it was a great career with them because they have an amazing culture, amazing leadership. They also have a very good name in Southeast Asia and in Singapore. They're one of the tier one brands here in the professional recruitment space. Whereas other markets, they're really known for blue collar work and they're known
Hmm.
for temporary workers. But here we place some exceptional senior staff across corporates, small, medium, as well as my remit with startups. So working a lot with the sort of Series A plus startups, placing engineers for the fast growth tech businesses. So it was amazing run with them, I have to say.
And what was the toughest recruiting position that you ever had, and why?
Yep. So just like career wise, or just like more recently, like over the last 3 years.
Let's start career wise and then more recently.
Yeah, I think it's very contextualized because recruiting in Singapore, you have to be very mindful of prioritizing Singaporeans and permanent residents. So if you're asked for a super tricky technological skill set and you're only restricted to a local pool of talent, every role becomes hard, right? It becomes a lot tougher because this talent, they're highly desired, and you have to kind of fight against the tides to win them over. And a lot of clients I worked with didn't want to engage in bidding wars and wanted to hire based on merit and not demand of that specific talent. I think some of the tougher positions, and maybe one of the toughest positions that we managed to close, of course, all things tech, and more recently, all things blockchain devs and sort of like smart contract devs and things of that nature. But a role that was quite interesting was a position. I think it's fine to say client. If they're listening, like, it's all love. You guys took care of me for many years. Was MasterCard, and they were looking
Mhm.
for basically an Asia head for crisis management. And this is so crisis management is basically, and how they explain it to me when I was taking the role on was, remember that time in India where like or in it was in Bombay, they're like the Marriott hotel basically got invaded by a bunch of terrorists, and they held held some of them hostage. It was actually quite horrific, right? What had happened in this hotel, and they went room to room, and it was tragic what had happened there. I don't want to get into detail. I don't want to make this a morbid podcast or anything, but we have to recognize the traumas in our world that exist and happen. And they explained, they said, look, when stuff like that happens, the head in that region, so the Asia head or South Asia head for crisis management, gets the first phone call. And they are responsible for any physical and technological threats that face their business. And
That
they're
is
like,
such a tough position.
well, that's a tough position. So I'm like, you're basically looking for like Keanu Reeves, or who's the guy from Taken? The guy who's like, I'm gonna find you and I'm gonna,
Yeah, I know who you mean.
you know who I mean? Dang it, we're both drawing a blank on it. But it's it was, on one hand, it's a very challenging position because you then need someone who's done these things before, where you ask us, like, tell us about like a crisis. Like, did anything happen at an airport where you were the point person at de-escalating? Did you get a cyber threat where they were threatened to leak 1 million bank accounts if you didn't pay a certain ransom? Like, the interview process and like really finding out the stories from people was fascinating. And we were pulling people obviously from other payments and banking companies, and people from not that sector at all. Some people from government that are responsible for de-escalating such events. And on one hand, it is a very challenging position, but also for a brand like MasterCard, it's a huge opportunity. And talent really latched onto this. It took about 6 months, but we managed to find someone who did
Wow.
very, very similar work for another payments brand, and gave us, I think it came down to the anecdotes and to the experiences. Like, I mean, hopefully nothing as tragic as like terrorists coming in, but maybe something thwarting a cyber attack, or
Mhm.
maybe thwarting a physical threat. It could just be someone walking into your visa offices and just like causing a big commotion, but maybe you're able to stop that. So I think that was not only the most challenging, because MasterCard sets a very high bar for anything crisis management, but also super rewarding and super interesting position,
Mhm.
because it really did feel like you're finding that like Keanu Reeves equivalent that can defend an organization both physically and technologically. So yeah, sorry if I ranted a bit, but that was a
It,
pretty interesting position.
it sounds very tough, and what you just said is so interesting because it is. I feel the same. Super rewarding. The tougher the position, the more it makes. You could say maybe even makes fun, or the more rewarding it is in the end to find the most suitable person for it. And that's what
Yeah,
I really love about it.
yeah, no,
What do you look for in people? Like how, I'm pretty sure you have a very good gut feeling. So you know, okay, what to take care of, what to look for. Tell us a little bit. So how does it work? How does it feel? When do you say, "Oh, that's a green flag," or "Oh, that's a red flag. I'm going to stay away."
yeah. So for me, it's gonna sound a bit ironic, but I'm someone that always sees the best in people. Um, I'm the kind of guy who will interview and just think everyone has something special, and so I'll probably tell you the thing that makes me maybe the best and the worst person at identifying talent to some extent, because I truly think in inherent good. I feel like everyone has redeeming qualities. There's, pros and cons with everyone, but they're all redeemable and they all could make it work. So in fact, at my last job, my ex-boss, Daljit,
Mhm.
would put me in every interview you can imagine for all my 8 years there. And he'd always debrief with me first, and he never learned his lesson. He's like, "D, what's your?" I'm like, "I think they're awesome. Like, I think they're gonna be it. Like, put them." So I think I'll answer this in two parts. When I recruit for our team, because I know I'll be working with them, and no one's perfect, I'm like, I can make this work. It doesn't have to be perfect. But for my clients, I think it's a little bit different, right? I'm able to put kind of a more cynical view on things, to say, okay, people are always going to tell you what they want you to hear, and they're also always going to kind of like glamorize it. So for me, I lean into the people that start off by telling me about their failures, telling me about their imperfections, telling me about where they got something almost right but completely didn't, and it goofed. And the people that, even if they did something well, saying they could have done it a little bit better, versus the CV with all the accolades, all the trophies, all the top sales here, all the top things here. So for me, and a lot of people probably relate with this, but I'm a true empath. Like, I connect on an emotional level to the highest degree. Their pain is my pain. Their feelings are my feelings. I'm able on an instinctive level to pick up signs when someone's like uncomfortable, or if something's not connecting with something, or if someone's dishonest, especially. And it's been very interesting having that in my dating life, but it's something that I remember even hiring like an energy coach who does this human body design reading. And this was done maybe about 6 months ago. And just validating the fact that one of my gifts in life, whether I choose to use it for recruitment or anything else, is just being extremely, extremely empathetic. And with that, of course, comes certain benefits of higher EQ and tuning in the people's emotional signals and emotional, sort of like tells, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. And this is a skill or a talent to read between the lines. Not only what they tell you, but also what they do not tell you, what they do not show you. But you can still read or still, yeah, realize. And that's something very special. And that's also the moment when I think, yeah, but everybody can do this. Not in order to say you know what I mean. It's not in order to make you look bad. You know what I mean, hopefully. But more
No, I
like,
know exactly what you mean.
yeah, it's more like, yeah, but like I shared at the beginning, why am I special? Because everybody can do this, or everybody knows how
Mhm.
to talk to people, how to stand in front of a group of stranger and just talk to them. And then I realized, oh, actually, they don't. So what you just shared is super interesting because for a lot of people out there, it's very hard to find out what they're good at and find out how to find their career path or also in their purpose in life. And that was a very nice sharing. Thank you. Do you know the book Humankind?
Right on. Is that better, light-wise?
Yeah, here you go.
Sorry, you were asking?
Do you know the book Humankind?
Sounds really Sounds really that's not the one with the lady that like spends time with the apes or the monkeys.
No. It's more about in German. It's called Im Grunde gut, and it's
Mhm.
about that the author or the research team believes in that people are good, humans are good, and not like
Okay.
okay, we need to take care, we need to be careful, but more the other way around. And the book is I'm gonna send you the link and I put it in the show notes because what I like is that it's the other way around, that it doesn't say oh be careful and humankind is bad and we do so many mistakes, which is maybe also true,
Mhm.
but first of all, it's hey, humankind. Humankind is good. Humankind is positive, and that we're here to be nice to each other. And I really like that. So I'm gonna send it to you. Maybe it's interesting for you to read.
Yeah, no, I like the synopsis of it already. I feel like I can relate to this author right off the bat.
Have you ever been to Denmark?
Never been to Denmark.
Because what I just read last week, and this is something that fascinated me as well, is that they're now trying because they have obviously never been there too. Obviously, they have a very good, trustworthy relationship one to each other, and so there are stores or stuff where the people can just go there, scan their stuff, pay it by themselves, go out, and nobody's checking because they try to build a trust. I don't know how you want to call that kind of research, but it's super
Mhm.
interesting because they believe that people are honest and that they're trustworthy and that this can work out. And now they have a trial period. And I'm like, I'm not sure if I would dare to do this,
Yeah.
but pretty interesting to see it from the other way around.
Yeah. No, that's I'm curious to see how that study goes. Like I feel like I do believe in intrinsic good. Like don't get me wrong, I know there's definitely some bad apples out there. But I do conform definitely to more intrinsic good than bad. I think by default people
Yeah.
tend to come out good and there's maybe situations that cause them to stray. But no, I both the Denmark concept and this book, that's my tribe.
Yeah, I'm gonna send it to you. And so to come back again, what is a red flag? Like you already said, hey, I'm very positive. I come out of the interview and I'm pretty sure this person fits. That's the perfect match, or maybe not the perfect match, but a good interview.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure you already had some interviews where you were like, yeah, maybe not so suitable, or
Yeah.
maybe this was not your best interview candidate.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things that are like red flaggish. Is like one would definitely be someone who constantly interrupts, doesn't let anyone finish their
Mhm.
train of thought, kind of bulldozes conversation. So someone that's just very interjecty or interrupty, huge red flag for me. And even the hygiene stuff. So say if they're coming super late, not even super. For me, I'm German, right? Like 2 minutes late is unacceptable.
Yep.
So I think any amount of tardiness for me, like even though I like everyone, probably
Yep.
the top red flags that will get you on a naughty list for someone who would probably said yes if you just gotten these basics correct, would definitely be the tardiness. Definitely. So like obviously first you can't recreate first impressions, and whether that's for us in our brand interviewing and recruiting or for our clients. I remember there was a big four consulting firm where we're placing it was junior level consultants, but it's still a consulting firm, so there's still an image that you must uphold. And I remember we prep these candidates. We tell them, look, first impressions can't be replicated. Like, dress for the role that
Mm.
you want, not for the role that you have or the role that you're going
Yeah.
for. And it's a rule that can't be overstated, especially in the youth. Like Alpha Gen. Hopefully, you guys get it together. But in this particular instance, it was a gentleman, maybe like late 20s, who showed up to the interview with a singlet, so like a tank top, shorts, and one of those plastic grocery bags, like it just come from the market, and he's just popping in for a quick interview. This was probably the most berated I've gotten on an email chain in not of all time. There's been some worse scenarios, but in this instance, they were like, "How can a firm like Randstad send
Yeah.
someone in that's in short singlets in this?" And the point there is obviously there are flags being around punctuality, being about dress code, being about image, being having some level of self-awareness or EQ in those meetings by not
Yeah.
interjecting and jumping in at every other second. So I think those are probably the biggest ones,
Mhm.
that no matter what AI technology exists and how technology is moving as fast as now, there's still basics that get them wrong. And in this climate, as we're heading into economic uncertain times, like you don't want to get that first interview stuff by logging on to the Zoom invite 4 minutes late, or not having your camera on, or
Yeah.
looking just like you came from the gym, or that you're about to go to the gym. It's like, plug in.
What I think is like, how important is this meeting, this interview for you if you show up like this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Last week I actually had somebody just coming back from the gym and he was showered already, but still he was so sweating, and then in the middle of the interview he's like, okay, I'm sorry, I need to get a towel because I don't stop sweating. And I'm like, I can see it because he was really even like, yeah, no, okay, yeah, no matter what. But it was interesting.
Mhm.
And the worst part I had so far was when I call them, just to remind them, make sure, hey, tomorrow's your interview, be on time.
Mhm.
Da, da, da. Sometimes I give them a reminder, and then the candidate's like, oh well, sorry, I'm just on the toilet. Tell me, and I'm like, I'm sorry, too much information. I don't care. So maybe we just cancel tomorrow. And we gave him a shot still, but it didn't work out in the end. But it's like, when did you? I don't know. When did you come up with the idea to share such stuff in an interview? I mean, it's still a job.
Yeah.
And what I'm wondering, because so many times you read the slogan, hey, our company is like a family. What do
Mhm.
you think about when you hear this?
Yeah. So it's funny because if you would have asked me maybe like, so I just turned 37, and I think working in corporate most of my life, I used to look at that saying very different than when I look at it now. So back then, I would have understood it as like, we spend more time with colleagues than we do with our own family or our own partners, sometimes our own kids if we have them. So, for that reason, they become family, and someone you should confide in, you should win with, you should lose with, you should laugh with, you should cry with. And as I've gotten older, now I kind of see that it's, to be very honest, I think it's just like corporate jargon, like almost bordering on propaganda. I feel like it's there's a clear separation between work and actual family and friends. And I think, being very honest, you shouldn't delude yourself into thinking corporates are family if they promote themselves to be. Be very cautious, because
Yeah.
it's a bit to kind of drive productivity and commitment out of you. But keep one thing in mind: a business will always do its best for itself when economic uncertainty is looming. So you as an individual need to always do what's best for yourself. So not saying every corporate, is kind of this savage, but to answer the question, I think family is the friends you choose. Family is the family you were born into, like biologically. That's very different than the people that chose to work at the same company you in a similar role as you or in a similar department as you, and you just see them. There's some people I work with for many, 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 many years, and I've never thought to invite them to my birthday. It never
Yeah.
even struck my mind. So I think it took me a while to get there, but it's a strategy that I guess corporates like to play on. But if you're hearing this, be cautious, and there's no such thing as like work being your family.
I appreciate you saying this because what I always think of is you would never fire your brother if, I don't know, the project didn't work out the way you want or the numbers are not there anymore.
Mhm.
And I know there are also families that have really maybe issues, maybe problems, maybe challenging times. I don't say that every time it's great, but still it's a big difference between a company where you really, I mean, it's an economic thing, right? You need to make
Yeah,
the numbers, you need to be good in working and bringing the stuff and finalizing the projects and everything. And in a family, fingers crossed, hopefully you can just be you are and you don't have to work. You're like, you are not the work you do.
yes,
And yeah, that's a
good way of putting it. You are not the work.
difference.
A big difference. So I'm glad we agree on this front.
Yeah.
Taking a while for me to get to that rationale, but now that I'm here, there's no going back. Like it's as clear as day.
Yeah, and I mean, you can still love your job, right? You can still have a great time, love your job, put everything into it, but still just have in mind, hey, it can happen that I don't know, there's a layoff or anything, then I'm out, and that's a difference.
Yeah, true. You can still have that same ethic toward you can still have your work bestie. You can still have your work husband or wife. You can still have your like work papa or mama. Like you can still
Yeah,
sort of like lean into it, but just know it's all words.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and blending the two in the truest sense of what family is. I don't. It doesn't make sense.
no. What was for you the biggest challenge career wise, be it in Singapore or beforehand?
Hmm. Well, I think with anything, right, when you like move into a new market, the biggest challenge is to like build those networks and build those relationships, not just externally with potential buyers of what you're selling, but also like internally. I think my biggest challenge definitely was coming to Asia, um, and then after 6 months joining a brand like Randstad, which was well established and close to 100 employees. I was the only like black mixed American guy. There's no other American, no other black mixed guys. And even though I spoke very well, and people knew I had the work ethic there, and I was standing on business and I was trying to get things done. You still had a very local task force. You still had lots of Singaporeans, and you had like Singaporean Chinese, you had Singaporean Indian, you had Indian expats. Um, and they were just unsure of me. They were like,
Mm.
okay, he can speak well. It doesn't mean he can sell well. It doesn't mean he can, win us business. And it took months and months for me to actually win credibility with the delivery team, with my peer group, because they just saw me as this new shiny object that the firm decided to hire without really any traction or experience even in Asia. I've been in Asia for 6 months. Like, so hold on a minute. We're supposed to now work on this guy's accounts because he's telling us to. So there's a lot of resistance. It's like fine, we'll get to it when we can, Dilo. But it was me actually recruiting for my own roles. So MasterCard was one of the biggest accounts I brought in just off a cold call. I saw a UI UX designer opening. As a head of UI UX. I said, hey, give me this role. I won't let you down. And I remember rolling up my sleeves, getting it done. And it's after getting those placements that the credibility won. So I think the challenge was just establish myself in a brand new country with a local team that knew I wasn't just this American like car salesman that can actually like deliver for them. And once the money started rolling in, they piled in to work everything I brought in. And that was a beautiful feeling. And running in teams, I eventually finished as a director at Randstad, but it became about really just getting my hands dirty for the first couple of years, staying late, doing all the calls you need to make it happen. But it was obviously well worth it.
And how I got to know you, you're never too busy to get your hands dirty, and that's something that's really that keeps you bringing far in life. Like you can achieve a lot that way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually why I left Randstad, is because I got to such a senior level where they wanted me to just manage, and they wanted me to focus on strategy and operationalizing teams and making them high performance. I was like,
Interesting. Not so much hands-on anymore.
not so hands on. I had a huge team under me, and I just felt like my weeks were filled with one-on-one link ups. They were filled with manager meetings. They were filled with one-on-ones with just my director on like hiring and recruiting for the team. And there was no time spent in market. I couldn't sell. I couldn't get my hands dirty. I couldn't sell with my team. It was just all high level stuff. And I was like, I'm not ready to be at that level. And that's why, this firm that I work for now approached me. And man, my hands are staying dirty for 2 years. I got everything I asked for, which means like no direct reports, individual contributor, army of one, just in the trenches again, just getting it done.
It's where
And
we thrive.
and it's been rewarding. It's what I wanted. And a lot of people are like, you're crazy. Like a lot of people work to get to that spot where they just have all these fishies do what they need to do. But I'm like, no. I am a player, not a coach. I don't even know if I ever want to be a coach. Like I want to just be a player until my knees cave in or until my hands fall off.
That is cool. And I see it every time on LinkedIn when I go online. I'm like, oh yeah, there was a new event, a new whatever gathering or so.
Yeah,
So
see?
every time I'm like, okay, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And what I'm really, really curious about is
Yes.
how do you manage to meet new people and become friends? Like it feels like it's such a smooth thing, and it's also quite easy for me, but I have the feeling it's 100 times easier for you and smoother. And I don't know. So how do you get to know new people? How do you get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, even with this new firm that I'm working at now, it's kind of rebuilding my name because it is under a new banner and it's a different service offering. What we do is international go-to-market strategies for startups, and we do a lot of advisory work with enabling these founders to take their businesses overseas, winning customers, and it takes a lot of trust and likability as well for them to take things past proposal to potential signing off and execution. And a lot of the events that we curate are industry or function events. So I run a lot of like ESG events. I run Black executives events. I run chief of staff events. I do a lot of founder CTO type events, ex-military events.
And you
So
build them from scratch, right?
from scratch. It's from
Yeah.
scratch. I literally just sit on a PC like this. I open up LinkedIn. I have my little Boolean to kind of say, okay, what do I want today? Is it going to be a CTO breakfast? Going to be a GM or MD breakfast? From what vertical? And it's just, what I've learned about connecting with people that are total strangers. You know, you do have a small window to pique their curiosity. And, how I tend to do it is for a lot of my events or a lot of the introductions of people is create sort of an anchor or a name that maybe resonates with them. So if I run a CTO event, having one person that's credibility to say, okay, they're going to probably join, maybe not for me, they maybe like my profile picture and they see I do cool things, but that's not enough. And that kind of gets a little bit of the crowd pull. But once they're visible to me, if it's like at a networking event or if it's a breakfast that I'm hosting, or if I just bump into someone, at the Mandela like club, the little like Soho club here, when they're in my Venus flytrap, there's one simple rule I keep in mind, and that's people like to be around people that make them feel good about themselves. That is like the rule 101 in terms of building new friendships, maintaining those friendships, and enriching those friendships. If you ask yourself like why you choose to hang around certain people, it's because you feel better when you finish talking to them or when you finish doing coffee. I get so many messages once I'm done with coffee for people that maybe I meet them out at something and it's a very big setting and we catch up one-on-one. So many messages saying, D, that was so awesome. Can't wait to do it again. D, your energy, your vibe, you're this, you're that, and you're just being who you are. But I don't think it's a superpower. There's no
No
tacit thing.
strategy.
Yeah, it's no strategy, exactly.
Yeah.
There's no strategy. But if you can figure out how you can make someone feel good when they are in your presence, man, the keys to the kingdom are there. And it could just be like taking a curiosity. Like I met with someone who's worked for the State Department, U.S. State Department for 22 years in foreign affairs, and she's like, "Tell me about the craziest day you've ever had. Like, how did you get into it? You've spent time at Princeton. Like, how's it like, like doing, Ministry of Foreign Affairs at Princeton, and then how do you get to sing?" But just one common rule. It's just Talk
Yeah.
more about them than yourself. But keep this in mind because it's a rule just in general, and I think this, especially in recruitment, when you're getting clients that want to like and buy from you, and when you're getting talent that essentially is uprooting their current situation. Most of them may be best candidates are always going to be in a job. Like I hate
Mhm.
to follow this school of thought, but I do believe the best candidates are always the ones already working. Not saying there's a pool of people that just lost their job that are just as great, but chances are you're going to find someone that's heads down and they're the one that's going to kind of take your company to the next level. So for that reason, them liking every exchange they have with you until it's time for the offer is going to be instrumental in them saying yes, or at least when they say no, giving you a genuine reason as to
Mhm.
why it's a no versus just like some BS reason that they're
Yeah.
just going to blow you off with.
That is interesting because it was leading me to my next question, which you already kind of replied to. Because what my challenge
Mm-hmm.
is that I have interviews and the candidates feel so heard and listened to and so excited. And then I tell them a few days later, okay, I'm very thankful for your time, but in the end, I'm sorry we chose another candidate. And they're like, what? But it was the most amazing interview I've ever had. And
Mm-hmm.
it's great to hear that. And I hear it even quite often, but I'm like, okay, I need to be, I don't know, look worse in the interview or do not smile so much or do be not interested. But that's not me, that's just how I am.
I know what you
And
mean.
yeah, so you know that situation, and if so, how you handle that?
Yeah, it's a good point. So I think I've struggled with this even now. I've been doing this for a long time now, about 13 years. And, you almost have to ask yourself to tone down your enthusiasm or your conviction in making them believe that they actually stand a good shot with this interview or that you're going to be the headhunter or recruiter that's going to be responsible for placing them because they hear you have this energy, you have this sense, you give them this sense of comfort and like confidence that you're going to get it done, and then they're blowing up your phone, right? They're blowing you up. They're figuring out like why haven't I heard from you, and they're chasing you down, and it's for me. I've not mastered it, to be very honest. I kind of take the easy way out. So
Which
say
is
if it's which is depending on what the role type it is itself, and if it's a role where I know it's not going to be a lot of volume, or me having to meet with a lot of candidates, I meet with as little as possible. I almost never meet as well with speculative candidates,
Mhm.
right? Candidates that have just come onto the job market that are like, hey, I got your details from so and so. I'd really love to meet and pick your brain on the market. It's like, oh, like I
Yeah.
know you do, but the more time I spend with people in your situation, like, God bless you. I know it's a delicate scenario. I know you're trying to put food on the table and you're trying to support a family. But the more time I spend in these exchanges, and I could easily fill my weeks with these kind of exchanges, is less time calling into hiring managers, is less time, working with existing clients on more business. So my easy way out is just massively reducing, unless they come recommended from a hiring manager,
Mm.
or unless they come recommended from like a lifelong friend, someone who's going to be like in my groomsmen squad. Like it's really doing that, because no matter how much you downplay your enthusiasm and excitement for someone's possibilities of getting that job in an interview, or you assessing them and helping them wanting to find that job, they're always going to come down hard on you when you start ignoring, or they're going to
Mm.
chase you up a tree. I have like right now 700, if I just look at my phone, 700 unread messages on WhatsApp. Um, like I don't know if you can see that number. It's maybe not that clear.
Yeah, that's not that clear, but it's a high number. Wow, I get pulls when it's more than one, but I know that I'm very strict on that. Yeah.
I know. So me, I'm trying to find a way to get it to zero, and I'm never going to get that high again. But it is. And look, for me, I want to make it clear with talent, like never stop trying. But just be patient with whatever recruiter or headhunter that you're choosing to work with, whether it's an in-house role and you have that relationship with them, and they're managing the pipeline for these positions, or whether it's an agency style who's trying to get you across 5 to 10. It's just the more you blow them up, the less likely they're going to return that call. Just got to let them do their job. Checking in with them once every 3 months is more than enough for them to keep you top of mind.
Yeah, and I think you're first of all you're right, and at the second thought, it's a job. So it's not only Dilo, the headhunter, the hiring manager, the I don't know, event planner. It's like you have a life, you have your phone yourself. Like there's a person around all this, so that's also very important.
Yes, exactly. Until it's like all AI bots and like
Yeah.
like completely radicalized like ChatGPT exchanges. Like you're right. It's to
Yeah.
what you.
So my final question is, if there's anything you could wish for the recruiting world, for the startup world, for the business world, maybe there's any kind of thing you wish for or anything you would love more people knew about,
Mm-hmm.
what would it be?
Ooh, I like this one. I think what I would wish for is it actually kind of ties into the last point that I made, joking about kind of like ChatGPT and AI and whatnot. So I would say my wish would be that a majority of the recruitment process does not get replaced by these like automated like AI experiences. I feel at the end of the day, there can be certain elements of it, like for instance, like applicant tracking, and just maybe like job matching aspects where maybe your CV is in like a database of Randstad and we upload a job and maybe there's a 91% correlation what you've been doing and it puts you on a short list. But we tested this technology out, not the one I just mentioned, but we tested like a chatbot technology out where we chose this image of you know late 20s, early 30s, like Chinese woman, pretty good looking, as a chat bot, and the attention she was getting, people were just like abusing it to some extent, right? Just trying to like kind of flirt with this technology.
Oh
Some
my
people actually
gosh.
showed up at the offices wanting to meet this person, and we had to tell them like it's just a chatbot, like. And they
Are you
got so
kidding?
offended and they got so critical of us by employing like fake employees that they felt they had gotten, like taken advantage of. It's like, well, hold on a minute, like it takes two to tango here. But my hope is that the recruitment process and the human selection process for a startup, for a corporate, or a small to medium size, it's so important. And the things that we can measure by having a human to human exchange versus having some AI chatbot run through basics or just try to um, answer questions that we should not be lazy enough to be asking ourselves, is it's kind of dystopian to me. It's like Black Mirror-ish. So my wish for the recruitment space is that at least for our generation and the next, like for the selection process, or actually the evaluation process. Shortlisting can be somewhat automated, but the selection process and evaluation process rather of talent, that you know the job that you seek, it's more than just putting food into your mouth and money in your pocket. It's giving you purpose, right? And I also always oftentimes say, if you're in trouble with your health, you go to a doctor. When you're in trouble with the law, you go to a lawyer. When you're in trouble with your career, you go to a recruiter, right? You go to a headhunter. And I think for that reason, I mean, I would never in the next 20 years want a robot to like
Hmm.
do open heart surgery on me. I wouldn't want like a robot representing me if I like had some horrific accident. I need a lawyer to defend me. So that's my sorry, very long-winded way of saying, but I think my wish to the recruitment space, is let's not overly AI, um, the human selection process and evaluation process for hiring.
That's actually an awesome wish. And
Thank
I
you.
hope so too a lot. And yeah, it's great to have that humankind still being in touch with people and with real life humans. So that's pretty cool. Thank you, Dilo. It's been a long interview. Thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your career advice, tips, everything. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, Patricia, thanks for having me on. If I can support in any other way, if you have any other ideas ever, let me know. But thanks for having me on your podcast and let me know how you go.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.